So, let's go on with baking this properly now. Don't need the ID map, we want the normal world space ambient occlusion, all of these good things. These aren't so important, but it's good for some of the modifiers that we apply. All of this should be okay, and we want to use the high poly model to bake in detail. Set that max frontal distance to a good place, somewhere like that I think. We know when it's good there, it's good at the back, we checked before. I'll just check on this rear distance a bit. Just for places like this, more than anything. Somewhere like that's good. Okay, let's bake those textures. Let's get a good view on it while it does it. Can jump on over into paint now. There we go. Again, those extra details, that looks nice. Yeah, happy with that. Okay, so just coming back in on this, I think where we're baking the detail. Most of these settings are good, but I just want to come into the match and set this by mesh name, just so that we can be working on each of these separate assets and baking the detail individually. Okay, so I think I see what's going on here. Obviously, because I've got the suffix low poly for the low poly pieces and the suffix high poly for the high poly pieces, the name isn't actually matching. But that's an easy fix. I'll just jump on over to the 3ds Max and I'll export the version, the low poly version, just minus the suffix, and then I'll do the same for the high poly version so that the matches inside the model, the names inside the model should be matching. That won't take a moment to do. So now we're back in Substance Painter. I've removed the suffixes from all of the names of the components within the models so that the names match perfectly now. So we're working with the low poly model. We've got the colour space set up. We're going to go into bake. I'm just going to grab that ID map first. We're going to do it by mesh ID / polygroup and just bake that texture out. And then we want all of these back. I'm not sure if we had the height data, but I mean, it can try anyway. We'll jump back up to the common settings. We want to be working in 2K, and we're taking the high poly model. We're going to pull this max frontal distance back until we're in a good position around the model, and just kick this rear distance up a touch. That should be good. And now match, we want by mesh name, and everything's matching, perfect. And that should do us. Let's hit bake selected textures. Now we'll return to painting mode. Oh, that's much better. Yeah, because we were getting a little bit of pixelation between the button and the panels, but Baking by Mesh name seems to have cleared that up perfectly. I'm just going to look at the back of this. Yeah, perfect. So I'll start off by setting up the base colour. We'll get rid of the layer that we've been provided with. Go and create a folder. This will be main plastic underscore grey. Then inside that folder we're going to add a fill layer. I'll just call this base colour. The base colour looks like yellowish. It's something more like this from age, maybe a little bit less. Get a good look at that. Spin the light around it. Oh, wrong one. There we are. Yeah, something like that. Okay, and we want to make sure that this is on... How do I set up the gripping for this again? Add a mask to the folder. Black mask. No, we can do it this way. Mask with colour selection. Then we can choose the colour. We're going to choose orange. And we want to also deselect some parts of the model here, unless if I add a fill layer over the top of this now, well, do a folder, and we'll call this main plastic black sticker, and just for now I'm going to add a fill layer inside of this and just make it a dark colour for now. Then for this I want to add a black mask, and we want to just pick the... polygon fill. So we just want to fill these polys on the top here. And depending how the tutorial guides to do this, I may need this base colour, I may not, but for now it just differentiates for us and we can see what's going on. So back into paint, just close this for now. I'll go back to the base colour here where we can see it. So on top of the base colour we're going to add another fill layer, and we're going to call this dirt. Set that colour to something a bit dirtier. Let's go into the oranges maybe, just to get a bit of a grungy colour. Something like that. Then we're going to give that a black mask. Oh no, we don't need the fill in there actually. Yeah, don't need the fill because we're just going to the smart masks and we're going to use soft dirt. There we are. I'll just drop that on there. Then inside here we can just start upping the level of dirt until we've got it where we want it. Just work with this contrast a bit more. There we go. We also want inside this folder to select these as well, and also this trim. There we go. Now we can come back down to this dirt and really see what's going on with it where we want it. So we'd have the build up more so around the buttons. Maybe if I drop the contrast just a touch. Yeah, something like that. Not too over the top, but enough that you can see it's there. I think actually bring this grunge down a touch. Something like that's a bit more like it. I quite like where the dirt level's at. But that grunge amount, maybe even mess with the scale a touch, just tighten it in a bit. Something like that. Yeah, there we go. A bit finer detail. It's going to be dirtier inside here. I think now we're here, I'm actually going to come back to this base colour and just try and fine tune this ever so slightly. I do have a pure ref here if I bring that in while I'm scrolling around this. Something more like this aged kind of colour we're going for. I think maybe something more like that. I do prefer when they've been taken care of and they still look grey. That's probably closer to what they look like these days because it's been a few years. So maybe if I lighten it up a touch, take a touch of that yellowing out of it. Yeah, something more like that. That's more fitting to the real colours there. And now that we've done that, we probably want to make this dirt a touch more subtle. Yeah, something like that, just so that it's matching up with the colours that we've got. Because we needed that that extra amount in the dirt level to contrast harder against the yellow. Now that we've taken some of that out, it was a little bit over the top. Okay, so now we're going to add another layer over the top of the dirt. So another fill layer. This time we don't want most of these, we want the height. That's the only thing we're interested in. And we're going to add a black mask. And we're going to change this, not change this, add a fill to this. And then we've got the grayscale uniform colour at the bottom here. We're going to jump into textures. And we want a noise texture. This blue noise fast, that looks about the right one. So now that we've got that applied, if we come in a bit closer on the model, let's get the, oh, wrong button, get the light around here a bit so we can see properly. Then we can jump back up to the height here and just add a little bit to it. Nah, I still feel like that's a little bit too I don't know, it's a bit too much for this plastic. I can come in on the noise, let's just mess with the balance of this. Could reduce it, but it's a little bit too fine, I feel. In the tutorial it does use a different, it uses cells, a different texture. Let's try with this. It's a bit more like it. Like that. Work this contrast up a touch, not quite that heavy. Something like that, so we're still getting the finer details in there. Yeah, that's a much nicer result. I think I want to bring this even further down actually. Let's rough up the tiling a bit. Yeah, I think that's the effect I'm looking for. Maybe double it again. Yeah. It's subtle, but it's there. That's much nicer. Let's come back down into the balance. Just using the reflection off the light here to give me a good idea of what's going on here. Yeah, that's much nicer. I think I'm going to reduce this dirt as well. Just tone it down a touch. Yeah, something like that. I may come in with the opacity later and tone it down even further, but for now I'm happy with that. Okay, so call this plastic grain. Going to add another fill layer on top of that. I'm going to call this scratches. I'll try the black mask onto here. I'll try to fill. Inside the fill we want have a look what scratches we've got. Scratch is fine, that looks good. Okay, and we want to remove the colour, give it the height, and bury those in a little. Get a good position to be able to see this. Are we doing triplanar projection? No, we're not. Let's switch over to that, that'll be better. Yeah, that handles these corners much nicer. Come here, I'm going up the tile in a little. That's the plastic for the most part done there. Now what we want to do is prevent that from doing the same, where we're going to have the inner material here, and if I just change the name of this here to inner, just to make that a little bit easier to read. So inside this mask we want to remove these center polygons. We should be able to do that here. Yeah, it's because it's driven by the ID. Okay, well, a quick fix. I'm going to duplicate this. And we'll call this, if it'll let me, call that 101, duplicate, call 02. Then go into the colour selection for 01. I'm going to remove the base, and we're going to delete the colour selection off 02. Probably should have done this the other way round actually. Then in the mask for that, I'm just going to hand select these. There we go. That would have been much easier if the ID groups had worked properly for me. I will have a chat with my lecturer about why it didn't. But for now, we'll carry on. There we go. A little bit tedious, but we got there in the end. I'm just going to hide that, and we've got the colour there without any of the grain or the scratches. We can add that independently there. Okay, so now if we go into the folder here, and we take these, we can copy these layers and we'll throw them in this folder here. Because we already have the fill layer and we've applied the same effects that we've added to the rest of the model to this black inner area, we can affect those values independently. Now we'll jump over into the plastic grain. We won't go into the mask here because we can switch this out for the cells that we had, not the cells, this blue noise. We'll just swap that over here. Okay, I'll drop down to the base colour. We want to change this to base colour. And we'll add the roughness to this now, maybe even the metallic. And then if we come down to the plastic, yeah, we'll jump into grey one to begin with. Go down to the base colour, do the same again, add the metallic and the roughness. Off to the side here where we've got the light. Let's add a little bit of shine to this. Yeah, that's a bit nicer. Yeah, that's about right. So if I jump into the other plastic now, it's the only trouble when I've got two for the same thing here. So we're getting the same shine in this inner part on these little panels in the part behind Start and Select. Close this folder again. We'll go back into this grain. Now we can jump back into the scratches and we'll up the intensity of those. Again, it's subtle, but that's what we want. It just breaks this texture up a little bit. Just bury them in that texture a bit more. Just want them noticeable, but not like overwhelmingly so. Okay, now we jump back into the dirt. Okay, so now we'll add a grunge layer. So add a fill, call this grunge. Give it a black mask. Give that a fill. What's this? That's the one we want, grunge map 07. Throw that in there. And we don't want the colour, we're only interested in roughness. We'll ramp that all the way up. And jump over into this so that we can get it set up how we want it. Okay, so I'm going to take that and just copy it and jump down into the plastic and drop that into both of these grey plastics, just so that we've got that going on here. And just get a good angle. There we are, and we can see that we're starting to get that going on with the plastic as well. And I think we won't come into the dirt here. We'll add roughness. Okay, so let's just make this very easier to get my head around. So that's the main. This is the grey extras. So now I can find my way around this just that little bit easier. So I'm going to take a copy of the outer grey. This is going to be D-pad. So just clear the mask, there we are. That's what I was trying to do. And now I'll just add a mask with colour selection. I want the D-pad there. Okay, jump over into the dirt layer. I feel like I don't mind the scratches where they are. Yeah, I'm quite happy with how they look currently. Okay, so maybe scale the grunge back a bit further. I actually quite like that. I think what I'm going to do is call this grunge shine. Nah, grunge grease. Now if I duplicate this, we'll call this grunge dirt. And now we're going to go the other way with this. We're going to give it just that little bit of roughness. Like that. Around about there. And then, if I jump over into the mask again, I can just start upping that contrast a little, dropping the balance. Maybe even drop the contrast again, like that. We just want it nice, subtle additions. Now we're getting the both effects sort of playing against each other a little there. I feel like that looks nicer. Let's try it without. Nah. No, that's definitely better without that. That's a much more realistic D-pad. We will of course be adding the detailing, the little arrows on here and the circle in the centre. But for now that's looking good. Okay, so we'll go into this grunge grease and we'll add a paint layer inside that. If I cleared this out, yeah, we've got fingerprints here. It's probably the best one to use. Yeah, looks a bit better. Okay, so I'm going to be doing more or less the same process, texturing the buttons, the A and B and the start and select. So I'll get on with doing those. I'll probably time lapse from here. So what we've done there is we've just added a path around the divide between the coarse plastic material and the smooth plastic material, and just dip the height in a little bit, and that's helped to create the separation between the two different materials. Right, so now we want to go into the D-pad. We're going to go just above the base colour layer and add a paint. Let's get this light in a better position. Somewhere like that's probably good. Then we'll clear that. We're already in the alphas, we want this little arrow guy. we go. And we're going to come down here. We only want the height channel. We're going to drop that down to like 0.9 or something like that. Okay, now let's see, do we have just a box or something like that? Yeah, we'll do it with a square. Draw those in like that, and I'm fairly sure there's just a circle in here somewhere. There is, but I think what I'm going to do, if I change this to arrow edges, and then just duplicate this. Then I'll put in the circle, but first of all I want to bring that hardness right back down again for this. Maybe something like that. Might have to get it a bit more central. That's not so bad. Really, I could do with it being a smoother transition in. Do I have a gradient circle? Let's try with one of these and see what that does for us. I feel like that's a bit better, but even so. That actually isn't so bad, so let's spend a bit of time making sure this is lined up correctly. Yeah, quite happy with that. Okay, so I'm going to take those arrows, add an anchor point, height arrows is fine. Going to take the centre circle, add an anchor point. Okay, now I'm going to this dirt layer here, into the mask, into the actual dirt mask. Yep, here we go. So we want to add micro height. Wow, if I could spell it'd be dangerous. Arrows spelt like a normal human being there. Back into the dirt here. Into the dirt here. And looking at the height there. Can I add a second in here? Yes, I can. Looking at the height there as well. Then on the micro details here, set this to true. Starting to get it in there now. I'll just up the ambient occlusion depth. I feel like that looks a bit more realistic there. At this point I'm probably going to have to jump over into Photoshop to make a texture sheet for the details. If I just pull up the Pure F again, for the details here, like the select and start, obviously the font I need to get for the B and the A underneath, the little power button, I'm not sure that's actually supposed to be there, no it's not, but definitely these like rectangular decals, I'm going to have to just create a texture for those two ready to use in here. So I'm going to save this out and then I will jump over to Photoshop. Okay, so I'm in Adobe Photoshop. I'm going to go new file, and I think I've got a custom here set up somewhere, 2048 by 2048, just to give us a 2K texture space. And I've downloaded, if I get the text tool, so we've got a couple of fonts that I've downloaded for the Nintendo stuff. I can just find them out. Okay, so we've got the NES logo regular, that'll be for the A, B buttons and start and select. And then there's another one here, if I can remember where it is. Here we go, Pretendo regular. And this will be for the Nintendo logo. So I'm going to get on with creating this texture. I'll just time-lapse the footage, because that'll probably be the easiest way of doing this. And yeah, pick up after that. Okay, and that's the alpha done. I will export this out and we'll be able to use this in Substance Painter. Okay, I know I said we were jumping over into Substance Painter again here, but I've just opened up a fresh 2K texture file because I'm forgetting something. We want to make this embossed, I want to say logo, but little text print for the back of the controller. So I'm going to create that as a normal in Photoshop. I've downloaded a bunch of fonts that I believe are the correct ones for it, but it might take a little bit of trial and error. So I'll time-lapse from here on, because it's mostly just typing these out in the different fonts with the little R trademark logo, and then putting a box behind it and converting it into a normal. Okay, I'm struggling to find the 3D setting in the bar up here, so I'm going to export this image out as a PNG, and then I'm going to use a website called Photopea. Okay, so now we've got it saved, I'm going to throw the embossed version in here, and then I believe in filter we can go to 3D and we can turn it into a normal map. Yeah, and we'll see how that looks. Okay, so now we're back in Substance Painter. We can import the resources that we've just made. So we'll add resources. We're in the right one here. Yep, this is the one. And we want, if I can find it, this and... okay. Give me 1 second and I will just pull the other file over here to go and be in my downloads. There we go. So these two are the ones that we want, the files we've just created. And these are textures, both of them. We'll hit import and that'll pull them in. Just realised what I've done there. This actually isn't correct, we don't want this one. So I'm going to delete this. I'm just going to re-import that. Because that is not a texture, it's an alpha, and we want to use it as an alpha. Now we'll import. And I'm keeping these on current session because I have all of these resources for when I want to use them, and it saves clogging up my Substance Painter. Okay, that's more like it. So we're going to come over to the top of the stack here. What did I paint on this layer? This is going to be the... double check that, yeah. So I'm just going to call this top trim. Top trim emboss. And I know what that is there. And then we're going to create a layer on top of that paint layer. And we're going to call this text underscore decals. And then inside this we're going to come down here to the stencil. We're going to drag in the alpha that we've made. There we go. Okay, so we're going to hold S, the middle mouse button, and I believe it's, no, not left click, that's just it's the right mouse button I believe that I need. Yeah, there, to zoom that out. There we go. Okay, so I'm just going to hold S and use the left mouse button and shift just to make sure that's snapped the right way up for me. Down here we're only really interested in the colour because there's no difference in roughness or metallic or anything. They're literally just painted onto this rougher plastic surface here. Okay, so if I bring in the reference again and come down to the base colour, we're going to want the red. We don't want it quite as red as the buttons, we want to take a bit of colour out of it because it's not quite as bold as this red. So maybe something more like that. That looks about right for the colour that we're dealing with there. You obviously have to count for lighting as well, and this is clearly a stained old controller. Yeah, I don't know how much to trust these because some of these look like they might be fakes, or again here these look real, and this is again just a shade or two darker than the buttons. I'm going to come back on this image because it's quite a good image to use. So with that set, hit that. So we want to be looking directly onto the top of the asset, so let's just make sure we want to be an orthographic view for this, because that's going to be the cleanest way of doing this. So now, again, using this reference, I'm going to get myself in a good position here and hold S on the keyboard. We want to position this where the Nintendo logo should sit. Somewhere like that's probably good. It doesn't look, or is it central? That does look like, with the R trademark, that's pretty central above those buttons, and we've got this box that we can use to help line that up. We don't want anything in the alpha. Turn the spacing right down. So now we've got that, we can just paint this in. Let me just make my brush a little bit smaller so we're not doing anything by accident here. Yeah, there we go. Nice. Oh, just Control Z that. Let's do this right this time. There we go. Okay, so in this layer, I'm just going to rename this to NES text, and I'll do this. I'll use the same layer for the start and select. So I think I'm going to add another paint layer over the top of this, and let's just make sure that that's, yep, still got the stencil, no alpha. Is it? Is that using an alpha? Ah, uniform colour, I think that's right. Spacing all the way down. We're going to call this NES underscore decals. Right, so I can use this to get it about central on here. And I think I'm going to start on the top of this first. So I'm going to bring the reference in. I want to take a copy of this red, just so that I've got it. And now I've got that for when I want to switch back to this colour. And with that, we want to come in here and we want this colour for these little segments. So I'm going to select that. I'm just going to check on some of these cleaner looking controllers. It's all that sort of dusty greyish kind of colour. It's probably the cleanest one we're looking at. So it is a bit more grey than green, so let's take that out of the colour. Just make it a little greyer. Something like that. I feel like that's good. Okay, so let's move this down to line it up correctly now. Okay, something like that seems good. We'll paint this over. There we go. I'm just going to position the text above so that when we put the start and select on, it's going on top of these decals rather than below them. So grab this red again, just copy that, and then we'll go into the text and set the colour. There we go. Yeah, that's nice. Yeah, happy with that. So let's just get rid of this stencil out here, and we'll hit F5 to go back over to perspective mode, F6 being orthographic. Yeah, that's looking much nicer. I like how that's turning out. So now we want to look at the underside of the controller, so let's whip it round this way. We want to make sure that we've got the little block at the top here, so the right way round. And I want to hit F6 to go into orthographic, so I've got a good line up here. So we're going to create another layer for this, and I'll just call this N underscore back and boss, and I want to find that's alphas. I want to find the texture that we've brought in. Here we go. So inside here we want to only be using a normal, and now we're going to take this normal and we're going to slap it in the normal here, and we'll turn the spacing up so that we don't accidentally print too many of these. We want something like that. So let's just come in. It's not give us the background to this. I feel like I should have put a border on the box maybe. I may have to go and I can change the I can redo this texture. That's not a problem. Going Control Z that out. I'm just going to pause the video while I go and mess around in Photoshop and just put the border around this, and that should solve the problem that we're having. Okay, so I've just updated that. I'm going to delete that as a normal, just make sure it's not here. Now I'm going to import resources. I'll just re-import the normal that we've created there, and this is going to be a texture this time. Import. Just get rid of that so that I can find it in here. There we go. Drop that on there. That's much better. There we go. And now if I just make my brush less ridiculous sized and hit F5 to go into perspective. Yeah, quite happy with how that looks, that's nice. Okay, so now we want to look at getting the screw holes on the back of here. So if I switch back over into orthographic so that we're definitely facing directly underneath this, I'm going to add another paint layer. I'm going to call this screw holes, and for the normal search circle, and we are going to use this. So let's throw that into the normal here, and we'll bring the scale of this down. I'm just going to open up the reference again so that we can get an idea of how these screws are placed. Yeah, let's give us some nice positions to put the screws in. So I'll just pull this reference out of the way again so that I can bring that in when I need it. Okay, so now I'm going to add another paint layer on top of this, and this is going to be the screws. In here, not sure if I need to do anything there, we'll just search screw. Yeah, that looks like it should be the one. I'm going to want to slap that into here. Unless it's got... Ah, we've got a screw bolt. We'll use that. So, let's get right in on these. And we'll increase the size so that we're actually filling these holes. Okay, so the only thing left now really is this little circle part here. If I get right in on this, I'm honestly not even sure what that's for, but we'll include it. It's a detail that needs to be there. So I'm going to jump back into the screw holes panel here, and get rid of that. Screw holes only needs to be dealing with normal. And do we have just a circular part? I feel like this way it's got the little square in the centre. If I just pull this reference back in and we zoom right in, it's got like a little circle, so maybe this one. But that's like an actual screw head. We don't want it to look like a screw, we want it to just look like a circle. So if we just search circle. I think maybe the one that we've used, but that bumps really, we could do with it dipping in. I think we can get away with it. I'm just going to pull this over now so it's smaller than the screws. Maybe like that. We want to be just off, maybe one up, just off the left centre of this emboss. Like that. Oh, has that not done it? Of course it hasn't done it, I've not put it on here. Right, now we'll try that, shall we? There, that's better. So we've got the little hole there, a little circle. So I'm going to hit F5, I believe it's F5, to come out of orthographic. And now we can actually have a look around this. I think we're about there. So now we can look at exporting this. So I'll jump on up to File, and we want to export textures. I'm going to pick a location for this. Okay, now I've got a location for it in the Assess tutorial file. I'm just going to select the folder, and that's where it'll save it. We've got the output template set to Unreal Engine Packed, which is what we want. The file type it's going to export, I think might be worth doing. Let's have a look, maybe an EXR, I think that's probably going to give us the best quality out of this. Size based on each texture set size. Okay, so now we're going to jump over to the output templates, and we want to make sure we've got Unreal Engine Packed selected here. We can have a look at the list for exports just to see what we're getting out of this. So we're getting the base colour, emissive, the normal, and the occlusion, roughness and metallic as a mix map. We can jump over here and we'll just export. Okay, so now that we've got these, I'm just going to rename them. Right, now that we've got them, we're ready to jump on over into Unreal Engine. So to expand a little on the texture for the NES controller, I'm going to make a sticker. I'm going to use my logo for the sticker, just because it's something that I have to hand and it's going to be easy to produce. So I'm going to time-lapse making the sticker in Photoshop, and then we'll jump back into Substance Painter. We'll apply it to the model and export that as a second texture, so that when I take it all into Unreal I can render one with the sticker and one without, just to have a little bit of variation. Okay, so that is the alpha and the colour exported for the sticker. I'll jump over into Substance Painter now, and we'll get that imported. Okay, so now we're back in Substance Painter. There's a little bit of tidying I want to do, so I'm going to come to the top of the stack, create a folder. I'll just call this detailing. And then I can take all of these paint layers that we were doing for like the start and select, and for Nintendo, these little decal parts here. I'm just going to throw all that into detailing. We can close that folder and it keeps everything nice and neat for us. Then at the top of here, we're going to add a couple more paint layers. And these layers we're going to call, there we are, sticker colour and sticker data. And again, just to keep things neat, I'm going to create a folder, call that NS_sticker for Nebula Skull Sticker. We'll just throw them into that. And both of these want a black mask. Now we want to come up into File up top, and we want to import resources. There we are. And I'll find the alpha and the colour texture I've just created. So sticker colour and sticker alpha. And the alpha is an alpha, the colour is a texture. And import those. We've got one here. So now we're going to go into projection mode, and in the base colour of the sticker, I want to stay in projection mode here. So for sticker colour, we're going to come down to base colour. Let's get rid of these for now. And we're going to drag the colour into there. And then on the mask, okay, come down to grayscale here, and we're going to drag in the alpha. Like that. Right, so now just get myself a good position. I'm going to hit F6 to go and draw the graphic, and I'm going to just snap myself looking face down on the controller. Get myself a good position here. Go and hold S on the keyboard, and just position this where I want it. And we'll have it going over this crease so that we can just have that difference in texture there. Yeah, I think something like that looks good. So now I'm going to start painting this in. I need to do it on both the mask and the colour layer, so I'll just start getting the edges for the colour. Okay, now I'll jump over to the mask. I'll go back into the colour. That black's ever so slightly see-through, but I think that's going to give us a cool effect. Like one of those foil kind of stickers. I'm going to add some metallic to it, so that's not as bad as it could be. So now we're going to take the black mask here, and we're going to add an anchor point, and stick a colour mask as fine. Then we're going to go into the blend mask here, and add a fill layer. Then inside the fill, we're going to come down to the grayscale and reference that anchor point that we've just made. Like that. Right, so now that we've got that done, we can jump over to the colour again here, and just turn that overlay off there. And I'll hit F5 to go back into perspective mode. And come right in on this, so that we've got a good view of it. And then I can mess with things like the height, give it a little bit of depth. That doesn't seem to want to work. Okay, so it turns out I'm just dumb. I've used a paint layer. I should have used a fill layer. So I'm just going to remove this. Want to get rid of the actual layer. That. And then this is going to be the sticker data. Then we're going to add, well, we'll get rid of the colour, we just want the height, rough and metallic. We'll have the normal as well, why not? Give that a black mask, and then inside the black mask we're going to add the fill, and then inside the fill we're going to reference the anchor point, and then we can come up here and actually apply some of that to it. Right, now let's turn here, do I go replace? Was that going to do it? No. So it's looking like a sticker when you look against it, it's just we won't get rid of this ugly grain from inside it. Okay, I'm struggling to find anything online, so I'm going to have to a little bit piece this together myself. I've got an idea of what I'm going to try do, whether it'll work or not. We'll find out. But this may not be the correct workflow, just to make that very clear. So I want this in a plastic, and I want a copy of this. And then I want to paste it up here, And I'm going to call this sticker underscore height negate. And then I want to add a black mask. I want to use an anchor as a reference. So now just the mask, and then I want to invert this. Invert mask. Okay. And then the amount that we are affecting the height here. So this is, yeah. So let's just make this minus. Has that helped? That's reduced some of it. It's definitely cut down on it. Okay, I can't seem to get this work. What I was attempting to do was duplicate the height data for the rough plastic and then put it at the top of the stack, isolate the area of the sticker by inverting the mask for the sticker, and then add in the negative to what the height data was for the noise to flatten it back out again. But that doesn't seem to be working for me. It's all good fun. Realistically, I don't want to be spending a great deal more on this asset because there's other projects to be working on. So what I'm going to do is jump into this layer here, and I think I'm just going to remove beneath this in the mask. If I can do that, let's try with a paint layer. There we go. It's not so bad. I'm going to do the same on the scratches. I don't mind it being a little bit scratched into, but for the most part we want that data just as it is. There we go. I'm starting to look better now. And just get rid of this line out of it here. And instead come in and paint in some damage so that it looks like that's actually creased into the gap there. Just add a paint layer to the top of this. Yeah, I could probably make that work. Well, if you can't figure out how to fix it, work with it. But I'll be definitely having a chat with my lecturer about this, see if they can help me figure out where I was going wrong, because there's clearly something that I'm missing. But I'm quite happy with how that looks. So with that applied, I'm just going to export the textures again. Yeah, here we are. Nice. So now with all of that ready, I'm going to be jumping over into Unreal and we'll work through presenting this. I will record that as a video, but mostly I'm pretty sure the goal is to have the render produced for marking. But I'll provide it as a video as well for anybody that's following along with this that isn't to do with the university, just in case you guys are interested.
Let's go.